So Kendra said everybody else is going to watch the recording of the live class we're doing. So it's just us. So welcome, I'm Megan. We're gonna have a great time. I'm so glad a couple of you were with me live. It feels a lot less awkward than me talking to myself.
Thank you, I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, so the first part of our gorgeous gelding is going to go kind of fast and furious. In order to get all of the proportions right, which is usually the biggest struggle, the colors are a breeze if we get it to look like a horse. So we're going to put a grid across our entire canvas. We're going to do it relatively quickly, but it's going to really help us locate all of the different parts. And I'm going to use it as a map to get everything situated correctly. So we're going to start with medium brush. It has kind of a round tip at the top. And I painted the original horse completely with this brush. So we're really just going to be living with this brush. But if you ever want to maybe use baby brush or the little square brush that you have in your kit, the square brush would be a good substitute for this. If your brush isn't working and you want to use something else, feel free to switch up your tool. And one final note, I think Kendra includes this in her kits, but our acrylics are water-based plastic paints, so they dry really fast. So we really just try to keep them in water when we're not using it. And then I'll try to remember to mention this at the end, but if you use just a little bit of Dawn dish soap on the brushes and kind of rub it in a circle on your hand and then underwater until the water runs clear, you can clean out the brush really well that way. And then after that, I just kind of like to tidy the bristles like that. And that way we keep our paintbrushes, we extend their life by quite a bit. All right. So we're going to be working with a lot of grays to get our grid in. We're going to start with a lighter gray for the grid. So get a nice bit of white on your brush, and then a bit of black, and just a nice medium gray. And of course, we're just going to use the edge of our brush, and we're going to make just a nice cross. We're going to find the midline of the canvas, top to bottom. I'm just eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be exact. We just want it to be as accurate as we can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to make a mark on the left, halfway down. I'm going to make another mark on the right-hand side of the canvas, halfway down. And I'm going to, of course, disconnect them. It's not going to be a perfectly straight line, but we're going to end up covering it up later on anyway. Don't try to make it too thick. Make it as thin as you can with just a nice light edge of your brush there. We're going to do the same from top to bottom. Okay, Now we're going to divide each part in half. One more time, vertically and horizontally. I'm just going to continue making that grid. So that's it for the horizontal lines, or the vertical lines. Never mind, we have more to do. Sorry. I'm looking at my instructions here, and it's, here we go. One more vertical line. Top to bottom. Believe it or not, we're going to use every single one of these. And then we're going to have to cover them up. But our horse is going to look amazing. Okay, that is it for the vertical lines. So you should have 3 vertical lines and so far 3 horizontal lines. And we do need one more set of horizontal lines. So we're going to divide each box one more time. And then that'll be it. And we can take a pause after this and make sure everybody's done. You can see my lines are pretty imperfect, but in spite of that, they're going to help us quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
How's it look? Mine are looking, I don't think I'm very good at eyeballing this. All right. So now it's going to be kind of a game of Simon Says, and it's going to be fast and furious, and it's going to be fun.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to keep that light gray. As a matter of fact, make it even a little bit lighter. We just want to set the tone of this gray apart from your grid lines so we don't get them confused. So make it lighter. Technically, you can also make it darker, but we're going to go over it again anyway. I like to work in lighter colors as I'm blocking things in, just enough to see what I'm doing until I start adding my color. So you can have a nice light gray. I'm going to make mine just a little bit darker so you guys can see it from a distance, but do make sure that your color is different from the grid lines so we don't get them confused. So I'm still using medium brush. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is locate our midpoint of our canvas where our 2 midpoints intersect, and we're going to make a dot there because we're going to keep coming back to that for rapid reference. All right, so in the original painting, the cheek line, the curve of the face of the gelding kind of makes a circle, And so we're going to make that circle. So find your midline, and then we're going to go down maybe half an inch to an inch above the next line and just make a little mark. We're going to make a circle, but we're going to find the edges of the circle first. So midline, down, and I have just a little bit above this line here. Take this line, go back to our midline, our midpoint, and up one line, over one line, and then 1 inch further, and make a vertical line there for the right edge of the circle. And then I'm gonna go back to our midline. We're going to go up 2 lines, and then 1 inch from the next line, we're going to make a horizontal line for the top of the circle. So if you can see, this is what I've got so far. Okay. All right, and for our last one, the midline, we're going to go left 1, up 1, and that intersection is going to be our final line. So I'm actually going to make a little kind of a dot there so that I can see that. And now we're just going to make a nice large circle connecting the dots. It doesn't have to be perfect, it can be a bit messy. The nice thing about acrylic is we can paint over everything, and we're going to paint over all of this with color. So we're just finding our shapes in our borders and our outlines with our grays here. Okay? All right. So the nose of the horse comes down from the cheek, something like this. So now we're going to find those lines that come down for the face. So we're going to start on the left-hand side of the circle, on the dot we made at that intersection. And now I want you to come down from there along this line. So we have our very bottom horizontal line. We're going to come 1 up from that. And then we're going to go to the left, right about halfway between this line and the edge of the canvas. And we're going to make a little line right there. I'm just a bit to the right of the middle of that little block there. And then we're going to connect the edge of the circle down to that line. So we're going to find our midline, go down 1, and then about 1/3 of the way over to the right to the next one, going to make a line. And then the middle of the canvas from the bottom, first line up, go over to the left, about halfway between that line and the next line, and up into the middle of the square. Make a nice little dot there. And then we're going to go from the edge of the circle to our line down to this dot. So your lines should be wider where they start at the circle, and they should come down to a little bit of a V. a little bit closer. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Awesome. Okay. This is the first time I've gridded a painting. I thought it would help with the complexity of like animals. And so you'll have to give me your feedback at the end and tell me if it's a good idea.
I like it so far.
Yeah? It's kind of dry, but the color will be a ton of fun, so.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So now we're just gonna block in the nose. So from the bottom of the canvas in the middle, over one, and then from the bottom there, we're gonna go up into the middle of that square, just a little, about halfway, at about a 45-degree angle. And then we're going to mirror that line over here.
Okay.
And this isn't flipping me. Like when I say left, it looks like left, right?
Correct.
Okay. Right? Right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. And then from where that ended, we're just going to do a straight line up to where our last lines ended. Kind of look like a little nostril, little face there. Okay. So next we're going to do the ears. So we'll find our midpoint and we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, left halfway between, and just below that line, we're going to make a dot. So it's right there. And so the left-hand ear is really just going to be a triangle. So I'm going to use this cross right here as a guideline. And I'm going to go through that and then out to the left, a little bit past the midpoint of that square. I'm going to make a line. That will be the bottom of the ear. So I went through the midpoint, crossroads, out into the middle of the square, not quite out to the edge of the canvas. And then I'm going to go up from where I had the bottom of the ear into the middle of this square, just about the precise middle, and it's going to come down at a slight angle to the left to meet that line there. And then I'm just going to finish the triangle. All right. Okay, so the next ear, we have this cross at the top. We're going to start there, move to the right, past the midway point in that square, down maybe 1/4 of an inch, and make a mark. Squeeze that. Okay. Okay. And then we're crossing the line and going, kind of making a dot near the corner, but not touching it, maybe 1/2 inch from both sides. And we're just going to connect that. Line like that. And then just a little bit past the midline at the top here, going to make to the left about 1 inch, a dot. And I'm actually going to curve from that dot down here, and I'm going to curve over there. Kind of like a curvy triangle for that here. Okay. Kind of looks like it could be a horse. Yeah, cool. Okay, so before I move on, do you guys have any questions, hesitations? Good. All right. So we have the main shape of the horse. Turned out fairly well, I think. Okay. All right, so now we're going to do the eye. We're going to use the same color, the same gray. We're going to start at the midpoint, up 1, and just above that, we're going to make a line down, barely into the box at a slight angle. And that's just going to be the front of the eye. And then we're going to take the top of that and curve up about halfway into that box. And then curve down to meet that, the bottom. This is another triangle. Okay. And if the eye is too slanted, we can fix that in post-production. You can just make the lines a little bit less tilted at the top. Same with the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to paint in the nostril. So midline down to the bottom. And then we're going to go over 1, up about 1 inch, and into the circle a little. And then we're going to bring that down, cross the line into the next box about 1 inch. So we're going to kind of curve over to the left here, make just a little curve. And then we're going to mirror that curve on the other side, make a little almond shape. Make it a little thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. It's just going to be our guide for the nostril. Okay. So a lot of the edges are kind of sharp. The circle can be a little bit confusing. For the most part, I think our grid work is done. And now this is kind of silly, but we're going to get rid of some of the noise. So quickly, we're going to clean our medium brush. And we're just going to take straight white and go over some of the unnecessary grid lines so they're not distracting us. I'm just going to do it quickly, messily. I'm still going to be able to see through them, but this way we won't have to add several layers of color to cancel them out. Our first layer will already be done, and most of the work is done by the white.
Gosh. Hey.
One extra thing to cover up is this bottom of the circle here that's in the horse's head, in his face. Just get rid of that. Okay. So we're going to keep using gray. We're going to fix a few things about the horse to make it look a little less like it's composed of circles and triangles. We're going to get gray back on our brush. So the first thing we're going to fix is his cheek, because most swords, of course, they don't go straight from here. It's not a straight line. We definitely have, you know, more, this line, this circular line is going to come out. So if anything, this line will come in just a little, but we're going to sort of bring this line out a little, make it a little bit thicker, and just come out so it's not all one thick line there. I'm going to bring this line in a little underneath just to help facilitate that, and then make it nice. And the nice thing about it, like just making it thicker is easy, and you can always cover it up with white if it's too thick, but now is definitely the time to paint as thick as you think you need until it's starting to look a little bit more like a horse. And it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, it's definitely a little more ovally, a bit longer, so you can lengthen that line a little. And that line under there got shorter because I brought this down. Okay. So once I put that, we're going to block in some of the shadows. All right. We're going to start with his mane. I'm just going to outline the basic shape. We're going to start between his ears. It's going to come out from his ears, and it's going to be kind of a diamond shape. Come out. This side is going to be basically this. Here. Go darker so you can see it a little better. Outside of the diamond comes to a little bit of a point, kind of above his nose, and then top of the mane is going to come sweep just above the top of the eye and come back in. It's kind of like a loose diamond shape without any points.
Hey, stop.
And so within that, we're going to have a lot of different textures, but one key is along the edges. We don't want it to be just a blocking line. So we're going to take the brush and lightly just kind of, in random places, kind of, if you lighten your touch as you go past the edge, you get like a wispy hair effect. And kind of lighten those edges a little bit. And that's just the edges. We also want to not fill this in completely, but kind of bring strips of shadowing into there. Bringing strips, and I'm keeping the basic shape. I'm making them curvy. They're not straight lines. I'm curving out and down, curving out, down, and out to the left. So I'm starting from the right, curving into the left, just like little S shapes, really. Up, down, and out. And I'm going to keep doing that, but I don't want to fill in the whole thing because he's going to have different colors, textures, and highlights. But I'm just going to kind of keep following that idea. going to lighten this edge up a little. Bring some wispies down here. We're going to cover all of this up. So now's kind of the time to experiment with your brushwork, see what you like, see what looks best, because we're going to go all over this whole thing with color. So you'll kind of get a chance to fix anything, not quite to do it again, because we're not trying to cover all of the shadows. We're going to glaze over them with color. But now's the time. It's easy to fix something. If you want to go over it with white or a lighter gray and try again, now's definitely the time. Around the nose here, I'm going to add just a little bit of extra because those are all the ends of the name there. And I'm even going to go out a little bit more here. Perfect. Some thick at the top. And you definitely want to make sure that the top is thicker before it hits the eye, and then it starts to thin out. So it's not going to be the thickest part halfway down. It's going to be a bit thicker, really in the third top there. Okay. All right. We'll be able to add a lot of depth texture to that when we bring in our color. We're going to keep that same dark gray. We're just kind of fill in the center of the eye. We want to make sure it looks like an eye at this point so we can fix anything before we start adding color. We want to make sure it makes sense in the context of his whole face. It's pretty okay. So depending on how close yours is looking to mine, I made this quite a bit thicker, but on top of that, I think I want to make this line a little thinner, and I want the edge to be closer inside. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white, cover that up a little, so it makes a little more sense. But if yours looks good to you, then definitely leave it where it is. I'm just going to clean up my edges a little so it's not too thick. The nice part is at this point, while we're in grayscale, we can just go back and forth a little bit, add a little bit of white. We're looking at proportions. And if you're having a hard time, maybe it doesn't look quite right to you, but you think it needs to be adjusted a little, one really helpful trick is to step back 10 feet, 20 feet, just step back. And sometimes you can just see right there what you need to fix, what the problem is. And one other trick I actually like to use is if you don't have a lot of space, I like to take my phone out and open the camera and look at the picture through my camera. It just gives you that immediate perspective without having to back way up. And it's also tends to help identify those problem areas. All right. So I'm finding I want to make the bottom of the cheek come down where I put it, but I made the crescent thicker all the way around, but I don't think it needs to be quite as thick at the top. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that edge off. But it's still a circle, still a crescent, just adjusting the shape a little bit. And I think that looks quite a bit better. I'm liking how it looks. Our line over here that goes perfectly vertical, that helps outline the edge of the nose, but in reality, it's going to curve a little bit in. So I'm just going to block that out a little bit. I can still see where it is, but I'm just going to cover that up in white. So when I come in with color, I can fix that edge. I'm going to actually curve it around, follow up into the mane, since it's pretty obvious now where our nose needs to go, because we have our basic shape down. The nice thing is that we're all familiar with horses. Okay. I actually am looking at my screen to see what he looks like. It's helpful. Yeah, he looks okay. All right. All right. And the benefit of being here live is that you can flip your camera around and have me look at it, or even we can all look at it and help each other out in terms of perspective and what might need to be tweaked before we move on. So if you guys want to, we can point. Oh, that looks awesome. Sweet. I would almost take the mane. So his mane is coming out from his forehead a little. So I would almost just make that line a little bit more like this, just a little out a little bit more.
Okay.
Because it's going to, in real life, kind of come out just a little bit.
Okay, so a little bit more over the ear.
Yes, yes. I covered up the bottom of my ear here.
Okay.
Good, yeah.
So I don't like my nose.
That looks awesome, Crystal. Are you liking it?
I don't like the nose. I don't know what I need to do to fix it, but
Okay. I have an idea about the nose.
okay.
So I think that, so our bottom line here that goes vertical,
Yeah.
I think we could, if you take some white and go over it a little bit, keep the bottom of the nose here. I think that's good. But just go over those lines a little bit,
Okay.
those straight vertical lines. And then after you've gone over them, get a little more gray on your brush and almost make it more of a straight line from here, where under his chin is. Kind of a straight line from the bottom of the circle here down to where your point is. Because it's really just going to be a little bit less curved. We don't want it too curvy. And then here, I have the V here, the V at the bottom of his nose. So for underneath, I just kind of made it more of a straight line right here. And then I'm curving a little bit out, just a little bit out where his mouth is going to be. And if I don't, I'm not liking that. And then we're going to take the left-hand side of V and just do a little curve up into where his nose is going to go into his mane, and it's going to be covered by his mane. And horses have not delicate faces, but they're very, very strong faces. And so unlike a buffalo or even a cow, it's more proportions to kind of set out and get straight. So they're definitely tricky. But what I find helpful, if you're not liking what you're seeing, This line here is key. You can move it closer, move it farther out, add a little more curve, and you can play around with it until you're liking what you're seeing. This line here is also pretty key, this curve here. If you bring it down more, or even move it up, usually I find that bringing it down more is useful. Okay. So right now, I still have these two lines. This one was mostly covered up by his mane. This one, I just kind of made it straighter and made it come all the way down here and got rid of that vertical line that was right there because that was more of a guide and it makes his face look a little funky when we left it there. So I made it just one kind of thicker line. And then I still have this V down here, which I kept. But on the left-hand side, I curved up and around here into his mane. And I'm liking where it is just about now. We'll be ready to add some color pretty soon, I think. And it's also useful, don't be afraid to bring the mane out in a nice bubble. Pop above that line. He's got luscious locks. He's not afraid to show them off. All about the hair. All right. Okay. Now we're going to add a little more shading because all of this shading and shadowing is going to show through when we add our color. Because when we add our color, we're going to add some water to it and make it more of a glaze. So it's not going to completely cover our shadow. So what we're doing right now is going to be really useful when we start adding our yellows and our purples and our blues. All right. So I have a nice dark gray on my brush. We're just going to add a little bit of shadowing to the nose. I'm starting over at the left, almost where the mane starts to cover it, above the V. I'm just going to, don't block it in entirely. We're just kind of dabbing on the canvas to dab in some shadow here. Because the front of the nose, his muzzle, I guess, is that nice soft part, is of course going to be more black. Going to be a bit darker. And I'm not running it quite into the nostril, but I am making it at a slight angle. So it starts up here and goes down toward the nostril is the most important part. And then it kind of gets thinner as it goes to the bottom, like that. And then I'm going to just very lightly add a little above that. It's kind of messy right now. And I'm actually going to take the gray that's on my brush, just get some water, mix that into my brush so I have a kind of a more watery gray, because I don't want it to be too thick. So we're doing a little bit of a glaze right now. And I'm just going to shade in the bottom part of his face here very lightly, adding more water instead of adding more paint. And I'm kind of going to make a V around his eye a little bit. Just kind of tie that thick line in. You can see how I didn't get too close to his eye. There's actually going to be a very deep shadow under there that will build in with color. And I kind of thinned it out as I went up here. And now I'm going to do just a little bit of shadow, like a little patch of shadow above his eye. You know, there's where that like little socket above a horse's eye always is, because the eye bones out with the skull and there's always a depression back there. So that's what that's for. Just kind of a little patch of color, patch of shadow. It doesn't have to be any shape, kind of a blob. Okay. So if you're like me, you have quite a bit of shadow. We're almost done with that, but before we do, we're going to fill just the inside of this ear in, on the right-hand side of the ear. Because the left ear, of course, we're seeing the back of it, but we're seeing the inside of that right ear, and it's pretty dark. So we're going to fill that in. And then on the next step, we're going to add quite a bit of white to our gray and make a lighter gray. We don't want super dark blocks of shadow here when we start putting our color in, because like I said, all of that is going to show through. And we want to get some really nice, deep, rich, medium and light tones up here. So we're just going to add a little more texture to our shadow to keep it from being too blocky and dark and overwhelming all of that color. So you just have to trust me. So we're going to add some strips, some highlights to our mane. We're going to lighten some of this up, but not cover it all up. We're going to still let that shadow be there. I don't want all of this line to be too dark because I'm going to put a nice red over the top of it. But the main part is getting those highlights in the mane. We're also going to take this gray, paint the inside of the left hand here, the lighter gray. And while we're painting that, take the tip of that triangle, the left hand tip of that triangle, just bring it up a little, in a little curve, a little tip. Because of course his ear isn't going to be a perfect triangle. But if we just tip it up a little there, it looks like he's perking his ears. And a little bit of a curve. And the last thing I'm going to cover up with this light gray. So I still have this top curve of the circle here. That doesn't exist on his anatomy. I'm just going to go over it, block it out a bit, so it's not bothering my color. So part of the process of painting, I'm continually stepping back and squinting since I can't look at the picture through my phone. And so I'm always deciding, squinting. This looks a little too strong. I'm just going to take some white, gentle that crescent out a little bit more. You might want to strengthen yours. You might want to lessen it like me. You might want to leave alone. It's definitely an individualized process. Depends on what we make. And all of my ends are messy. That's just fine. Because we're going to cover the whole canvas still in color. Which is the funnest part. Pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Just emphasizing where the crescent crosses that line, comes up. We're going to emphasize that a little more in color so we don't have to worry about it too much. I have a really dark line right here, dark and thick. If you mirrored me with that, we do want to make that a little bit lighter, just kind of go over it, lighten it up, because that will mess with our color. I don't want this to be too dark, because that's going to be blue. Yeah. Okay. When I look at my screen, he kind of looks like a donkey. Does he look like a donkey to you guys?
No.
No,
Okay.
no, of course not.
I was thinking, I was like, I don't even know how that happened. My eye looks pretty good. Do you guys want a few minutes to kind of touch things up, maybe take a closer look at this one, or would you like to move on?
Will you give me advice on mine?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful. That's looking so good.
I still don't like his nose, but
His nose kind of drops down a little. So you know this line, so you still kind of have that vertical line there. It's pretty strong. So if you take that line that comes down to it and bring the bottom point down,
okay.
and kind of make that more one line instead of it kind of
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yep.
make it almost kind of smooth it out and make it more one line, which is a little bit of a curve in the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. No.
Yeah. Yeah. You could soften the same line under the chin if you wanted.
This one or this one?
That one, the bottom one.
This one.
So that connects to his nose.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Soften that a little bit.
Right.
Okay.
It kind of comes in at a V like this. It comes in at a V like this and then goes down.
Okay.
If you soften that line and make it a little bit more of a curve and bring it down a little bit so his nose isn't really dropping straight down, but it more just kind of looks like it's at an angle, the whole bottom of his face. Instead of like this and like this, we want it to be more like this. Those look great on this side. I think the grid helped us all. Made it so much less stressful for me. Because sometimes when I paint these, it doesn't look like the original at all. And it's terrifying.
Okay.
I think the grid work really helps to get the perspective and the correct trying to get
The right proportions.
right proportions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is that
yeah,
a little bit lighter?
perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then when you're adding color, yep, that'll just finish it off.
Okay, your voice kind of went funny.
Can you hear me now?
You're not as loud.
Yeah, it's like you're in a cave now.
Uh-oh. I don't know. I'm just looking at my phone. I'm just gonna mute myself real quick. See if that makes a difference.
Okay.
Is that any better?
No.
No. I mean, we can still hear you, but it just isn't as clear as what you were a little bit ago.
Maybe further away. Is that better?
No.
No?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I don't think I touched my phone. Sorry about that. It's a bummer. I'm just gonna exit out. I don't want to do that. It might mess up the recording. Okay. If it gets to the point where you can't understand, you can let me know and we'll have to figure something out.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think we're just about to the point where we can start adding a bit of color, which is exciting. I'm going to add a little more light in the main. We want light in the main.
Talking.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Oh,
Yep.
good. Maybe I just need to like not look at the camera. Wonderful. Okay. So the first color we're going to work in is a nice yellow. So we are going to want to clean off our brushes. And if you just have 1 cup of water and it's kind of dirty, now's the time to get fresh water because we're going to be using it to thin out our yellow.
Okay.
So we're going to take that deep yellow you have in your kit and thin it out with a lot of water. We want it to be very watery because we can always make it thicker, but we can't take the yellow away once we start covering up the shadows we've got. So I have some yellow on my brush and I just kind of keep mixing in more water. Okay. So we're going to start by covering his cheek up under his eye. Most of this area and his neck are going to be have like a yellow undercoat, but we're going to leave a patch kind of down around the nostril because we don't want to cover this up because we're going to use some blues down there. But for the most part, we can just take that glaze. You can see that shadow is showing through. It's not covering it up entirely, but it's still a nice, really bright yellow. Take that glaze and go almost over his whole head. So we've been leaving the neck alone, but we are going to have to find the curve of that neck behind him. And it's really just going to be where this right hand ear is, just a bit up the curve, maybe an inch or an inch and a half from the top of the canvas. It's going to come over to the right and just curve down nicely. And of course that's important because we have to fill it in with yellow. Just that yellow glaze. We don't want it too thick. It's going to give us a nice base to work from. A lot of color. We're not going to bring the yellow all the way under the chin here because that's going to be a darker blue. So I've got a lot of yellow on my horse right now. I'm actually going to take just a tiny bit of red, and we want kind of reddish orange. We still want the balance of it to be orange, so you're gonna want a lot more yellow than red because red is so strong. But go ahead and mix some red and yellow and find a nice orange. And then we're going to do an orange glaze for some medium tones over the yellow. So I've got a nice orange, light orange. This is my color, whatever one you want. Adding a lot of water. We're gonna, our darker medium tones, we're gonna work our medium tones into not just the places that have medium tones, but also the places that are going to have deeper, redder tones to build layers of color and texture, because we don't just go from one to the next. It's usually a graduated effect. So it's going to be around the chin here, or the cheek, the curve, that crescent curve there. I'm going to have that orange in there. We're going to have it under the mane here, kind of coming down into his nose, on the top of his nose, but not covering up the side and above the nostril. Here, we're going to come in a V below his eye, because we're going to have a lot of shadow under there. So we want to start working on that effect a little. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm adding more water and just mixing it on my palette with my brush. We're going to cover that dark patch, that blob we did above his eye. That's going to be covered in orange. And I'm going to bring that all the way up to his ear. Throughout the course of all of this, of course, we're going to cover all of the gray on the canvas. We're not going to leave any of that gray, but we are benefiting from the shadow and depth that it adds. It was kind of like an underpainting, really. So right here, where his neck curves over, I'm going to start thin and get thicker around the side of the canvas with my orange glaze. Get a bit thicker right down here. And I'm actually going to take this glaze and we don't want to go all the way down to the canvas, bottom of the canvas, because we're going to fill that in with a nice turquoise. But I'm going to make sure that kind of the bottom edges here has some of that nice orange covering that gray. I'm going to take my glaze and actually cover this gray ear in the back here. And I'm going to edge this here, just on the outer edge here. Okay, so now we have a lot of those oranges in there. We're going to wait on the red, and we're going to build in some of the nice rich blue shadow that is under here and kind of comes up here, and it's a lot in his mane, in his muzzle, under his eye, and in his ear. So I'm going to clean my brush real quick. And now we're going to be working with a nice purpley blue. So we're going to take the dark blue that you have in your kit, that nice phthalo blue, add a bit of red, and mix that in. You'll have a nice, deep, rich, very bluey purple. I don't know if you can see that, it's so dark. Okay. All right, so I'm not glazing this dark blue because we want it really thick for a little while. There are going to be parts that we want to glaze, but we're going to start some of the deeper shadows with just the straight blue. So a main part is under here, where that crescent meets the bottom. Just going to trace that line so that I don't cover it up. Shadow under there. And I am adding just a little bit of water so that I have a little bit of variation in the blue. Because if you thin it out a little, you get some of that rich color showing through instead of being just super dark. But you can keep it all dark if you prefer. But adding a little bit of water is just a nice way to add some more texture. In the shadow under here. Along this line. I'm actually going to bring it up. Bring this up on top of the yellow and the orange. A little bit more water as I go now, because this is darker down here, but I don't want to cover all of the yellow and orange. I want it to be more of a melding effect. I'm going to end it just a couple of inches down from the ear, the bottom of the ear. I don't want to bring it all the way up. And this line, where it comes down and up, I'm actually going to bring this curve in just a little bit and emphasize and curve it down. Helps emphasize his face a little bit. That's that way. And now the part where I brought it up here, I don't want it to just be this random line. So I'm going to add more water to my deep, deep bluish purple. And I'm just going to lightly come out a little bit and just kind of tie the shadow in without being too blocky. Just kind of streaky, making that transition a little bit less severe. Just kind of dragging my brush in that glaze where the colors are going to meet. It's kind of a very dark, kind of striking shadow under there. That pretty color. I'm using light wispy strokes in my brush so that the ends that position. Okay. Once that piece is done, we're going to take this dark blue, going to go make sure we glaze it really well, add quite a bit of water. And we're going to go over the shadow on our muzzle. Where we left this little white spot under the nostril, go over that with our glaze. You can see the difference. Lighter. I'm glazing over all the medium grays. It's very light.
We lost your voice again.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, it just sounds really tinny, and I don't know. Do you have a mic on?
No, it's just my phone.
Huh.
And my phone's new, so kind of a bummer. It was malfunctioning, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
You know what I'm wondering is if we muted ourselves.
Maybe. And we could give it a shot, and then you could unmute to speak. Does that help at all if I'm talking or no? Sorry, guys.
It's okay. It's all right.
I tried to hook my laptop up
there.
here. Better?
Yeah, now it's good.
Good gracious. My phone must be just temperamental.
Okay, can I show you mine and get a critique?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. So I would glaze your blue purple even more and make the transition between the orange and the blue a little bit, kind of blend them a little more.
Okay.
Bring it out into here a little bit more.
Okay, further into the neck.
Yes, and then this line up here, I make it a little bit thicker. Glaze your blue really well and just kind of bring this down lightly. And you want it to go from dark to light. You don't want it to be like a perfect line where it goes from dark to orange, but you want it to kind of transition. So if you glaze your blue really well and kind of make it that medium tone.
Okay.
It's looking awesome.
Ah.
I'm excited. It's going so well. Then once we glaze over the nose, I'm also going to do a little triangle, a nice thick glaze. By thick, I mean I've added a lot of water. And do kind of that triangle shadow under the eye. I'm actually going to smooth it out a little. My fingers, I use my fingers on canvas all the time. Sometimes finger painting is the best way to go. And then just kind of do a little V over there. I'm not covering up the eye, I'm just going underneath it. Because there's going to be a nice shadow under there. And the shadow will make more sense when we bring out the highlights in the eye. And I'm going to make the shadow under the eye a little bit thicker, a little bit darker blue toward the center, which I'm just going to do by adding less water. Not changing the actual color of my paint, I'm just adding a little less water to get a darker color in the very middle. A smaller V inside of a bigger V. There. While I'm at it, I'm also going to take the same color without it being glazed, so just straight, thick blue, and go over the middle of the eye. Because again, we're going to cover up all of the grays and the blacks and the whites. And I'm going to take that same unglazed blue and get the nostril. We don't want it to be a perfect circle. We actually kind of want, usually there's a little fold of skin that comes in right here. And then this side is like the right-hand side is going to be a nice circle, but there's a little fold of skin that's going to come in there. So I'm not going to make the whole thing. I'm going to focus my color on the right and almost make it sort of a backwards C or a little stirrup coming around there. So basically I'm taking this blue and covering all of the darkest grays that I blocked in. So the eye, the nostril, the muzzle, under here, inside the right ear. And of course in the mane. So we're gonna wanna take the blue, glaze it really well for the mane, and basically just do a blue glaze on the whole mane so that we don't have black anywhere. Even if it's really, really dark, it's going to be blue. But we want to glaze it because we want that texture that we already added to the mane to show through.
Can you focus in on the muzzle again?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've painted that all blue. Okay.
I did a blue glaze on top of the shadow that we added on the front here.
Okay.
And then I did just a really dark blue with no glaze for the nostril.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, mine just doesn't have, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. I'll just hold them here for a little while so you can see where I added the glaze and the darker bits. The main parts on the horse with the darkest parts, just that really thick dark blue, are the inside of the ear, the eye, the shadow under the eye, and the nostril.
And then lots of blue in the mane.
I did a really nice, I glazed the whole mane so that the shadow and the highlight that I added earlier still kind of helped give it texture.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet. One thing I just noticed is that my left hand ear, the triangle kind of pops above the mane. So I'm just going to bring the mane up to cover that edge there. So it looks like, it doesn't look like his ear is disconnected from his head. You may not have had that problem. Perfect. Okay. So now I'm just looking for any dark grays because I want to cover them up with a glaze of blue. Making sure I don't leave any gray uncovered, so that means the shadow, see above his eye, is a nice medium to dark gray, so I'm going over that with a blue glaze. Got most of the medium tones, I think. Some of the lighter tones in here, under the orange, we're gonna use some red to add a little more texture and depth right in there. Other than that, looking pretty good. There is one random patch of blue halfway between this line here and the nostril. Just kind of I'm just kind of dabbing in just a little, some texture there, because horses have a lot of veins and bones that stick out because they don't have a lot of hair. It's very close to the skin. So kind of just adding patches of shadow and highlight to help give us the illusion of that complexity. So I have just a little patch of shadow here that I just kind of dabbed in. About 2 inches long, not super specific. And then one more patch of shadow is going to be on the right-hand corner of the eye here, right up here. It's just going to be kind of a curving line up here. And really what that is giving the impression of is where that socket dips down below the horse's eye. There would also be kind of an edge, a ridge under there. So that's kind of giving that the impression of that right there. I think we'll see. And then, of course, he's not going to be having all of this luscious mane right here and be bald back here, but we are going to pretend that his mane is flipped over to the other side, but we just have to make sure we do a little dark line here along the top of his neck. And then I'm just going to bring it about an inch up where the hair is going to be folding over. I'm just going to fill that in with the same color we've been using for our shadow. And I'm not going to make it a perfect line. I'm almost going to make it like a caterpillar, kind of with just like a series of very subtle lumps so it doesn't look too unnatural. Just gonna go up behind his ear there, and there's that. We'll come in with the purple to help cover up the gray around the eye, and a red. I think that's most of that. I'm going to clean my brush and give you guys just another second, and then we're going to do some of the red next. All right. So of course I'm still using our lovely medium brush. You guys ready?
Yep.
Give me a second.
Absolutely.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Do you have any questions or?
Maybe. My computer's dying.
Mine doesn't have a very long battery life either. I usually get to the point where I have to run to get the charger or I'll lose everything. So we are going to take red next with just a little bit of yellow to kind of tone down the vibrancy. It's just a really rich color and we don't want it to be too bright. So I'm going to tone it down a little bit with some yellow. So it's more of a reddish orange. And we're going to, again, make this a nice glaze. So I'm adding quite a bit of water. And we're just going to focus on this crescent here. We've got a lot of red there. Just kind of breezy brush strokes. Doesn't have to be perfect. I want my colors to meld. So I'm going to on the top of the nose here. I'm also going to go over the outer edges of the triangle, under the nose. I'm going to go over above the eye, where that socket is, past the edges of it, and up toward the ear. Raising it down even more, go closer to the eye. I just don't want a super stark contrast. So I have less of a glaze right here, and I've glazed it more over this part to get the effect of a lighter color or thinner. And it's a bit streaky, so I'm just going to literally touch it up a little just to smooth out some of those lines. kind of messy. It makes it look a little bit different, but that's good because this is makes it a little bit more abstract, which I always love. Means the rules are looser. And where that V comes down under the I, I'm going to continue that line down here just a little bit. I don't want to, one thing we want to make sure we do is we don't want to cover all of the yellow, all of the orange, because then we're going to lose a lot of the variation in color that make this painting special. I am going to add just a strip of red on the muzzle. Kind of just dab red here and there. Continue that line down. Add a little under here. Kind of dabbing the tip of that round brush. Give some texture. And then I'm going to continue that glaze onto the neck, sort of where the blue and the orange come together. I'm going to cover that midline, make that transition a little less extreme with our more of our darker medium tone with the red. Still kind of wispy. Yeah. And then I'm going to glaze the left ear. I'm going to go on the outside of the right ear. Here. And now I'm actually going to add, I'll pause for a minute here. Get some of the red in there. The main parts we're focusing on with the deepest red are the crescent here, on the neck, the transition. I really left just a tiny bit of orange on the edge of the canvas, but I glazed most of the transition from the blue to the orange with my red. And then we don't want to forget the ear, the left ear over here. And then I do think just kind of the patches down here are also important. Just kind of, I got those just by dabbing my brush on the canvas. It almost gives a painted look, like an Indian pony. So the bit I'm going to do next is add just a little bit more yellow for a bit more of an orange. Still tending to the red, but more orange. And I'm not going to glaze this one. And I'm just going to add more color, highlights to the mane. So right in here, going to, remember we don't want straight lines in our mane, we want to keep it curvy. So if you're on this side, we're curving under, and then over here we curve over, and then they meet in the middle. And they come out and they swoop off the side of the nose because there's a stiff wind wherever this guy's hanging out. And I just start all my lines between the ears up here, because that, of course, is where it grows from. And I've got a nice, quite a bit of orange and red on top of my mane. Frankly, it's more than the original, but I really like the effect it's giving. And so I used a bit more. So you can use less, you can use more, depending on your preference. And while I have that orange, you see any gray spots that you missed? Medium gray tones. We want color on everything. So go over those. Gray. A little bit of an orange glaze. Tie it in. So I'm liking that. We're running a little short on time. So we're gonna start, we're very nearly finished anyway, with the complex painting. I think the grid really helped us. I was a bit nervous about time, but I think we're doing fairly well, considering the complexity. So we're gonna add a little bit more color in, just to try to get those vivid highlights. What we're going to do next is more of a lavender. So we're going to clean our brush. I'm going to mix red and blue, of course, with white to get a nice lavender color. Other options, you can do a pink just by adding a lot of white to the red. You can stick with the orange and blue theme and just do a lighter orange if you prefer. But I decided for a light highlight to go with a lavender. Because what's fun about these paintings where you add a ton of color for tones is that you can do crazy things and break rules, which is kind of fun. So I have a nice lavender, and really I'm just gonna go in, add a few more highlights in the mane, not too many. I'm actually going to border the top of the eye, kind of where his eyelashes would be, and just do a little bit of a border there, and a little bit underneath, just to kind of delineate the eye a little bit. Not a perfect border, just kind of sloppy, a little bit along the top and a little along the bottom. And of course, some highlights in the mane. It's not quite light enough, I want it to be a lighter lavender, so I'm gonna add some more white. Put some of these in here. There we go, it's a little better. I'm going to continue with a bit of that war paint theme. And I'm going to dab, just dab with the tip of my brush along the edge of the ear here, just a little bit. Kind of along here, where the mane meets the back of the neck there. And I'm actually right along here, where the mane meets the nose. I'm gonna dab along there. Just like that. Some texture in there. And I'm adding more white as I go along, because then instead of just one shade of lavender, I have 3 or 4, and that just brings in that many more colors, that much more variety into my painting. I'm going to do a small line of color under here. Stab that. Here. I kind of accidentally, when I was doing the original, did some of that, and I liked it so much that I left it, and I decided to incorporate it into the instructions. But if you don't like how it turns out, you can always cover it up. I'm adding a super light lavender, just to highlight a few of them, so that really kind of stands out. And then just my lightest lavender, a couple more highlights. I think that's it for that. We're going to want to move on to our nice turquoise that we have next. So for that guy, I am going to clean my brush. How are you ladies doing?
All right.
Good, I think.
I'll bring that up a bit for you. You guys are troopers letting me move so fast to get such a complex painting done. It's much easier to do in studio because we can I can walk around in between steps and help with every single step. So thank you for bearing with me virtually.
No, this is cool.
Yes.
I think there's something to do.
Yeah, right. We all need some variety. Working a lot less. And even canvases I don't like, I've done a couple of paint and sips where I'm a student. I keep them for a while, and some of them I end up falling in love with, even though I didn't like them initially. And others, I just paint with white over, and then you have a whole, a canvas you can still use. But the more I live with the original Gelding, the more I think I like him. I think he's my favorite out of the ones I've done. Haven't done many, I'm still currently.
Oh.
I guess the one benefit of doing this on YouTube or watching the video, you can start and pause it to take longer. Okay, so we're going to make the kind of turquoisey color to do more of the background. Obviously, there's not a ton of that. And the highlight of the eye, which is a major help in making sense of the space. And then we can do touch-ups after that. So we're going to take that beautiful dark green, or phthalo green. And to start with, we're actually going to add a little bit of white to it. And it's just this really beautiful color. Not too much white, kind of a medium phthalo green. You can see that's my color. And I'm going to start covering up my white. Careful where I get there. Of course, but like where it comes in with his vein, don't be afraid to add some highlights of the same color in his vein, and then kind of let the background bleed just a little bit into the edges of your horse. You want to make the paint spread more easily, add just a little bit of water.
And you just did the green and the white?
Yes, yeah.
I was cleaning my brush.
I love this green.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a sea green, not really a turquoise, but sea. And I said, don't be afraid to kind of get some of that color in the mane. So you don't have to outline all of your wispy edges, you just kind of let that bleed into the background. It kind of mix together. And we're not adding too much white.
and go right up to the horse?
Yes. So we're basically just covering all of the white.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't want to cover all of the work we did here, but we don't want a super defined border. We don't want any sharp edges or lines. So
Okay.
just like when we made the transition from the blue to the red to the orange, kind of all bleed into each other, we do want the same effect here. So we want to facilitate that, we add just a little bit of water, kind of nice, light
Sure.
brush strokes and uneven edges.
Okay.
Yeah. Once we have that base coat, you can keep doing what you're doing. I'm just going to let you know what the next step is. I'm going to take that straight phthalo green in a nice glaze, so I'm adding quite a bit more water, but with that straight green. And I'm just going to kind of tap my brush on the edge of the canvas and let it lightly kind of come off the edges, just to kind of darken the edge of the canvas. Give the background a little more interest. Just kind of slapping it off the edge of the canvas and letting it lightly ends fall where they end. And then I'm going to go over it with some horizontal strokes, some vertical strokes, almost to get a very, very subtle crosshatch effect so your background's not too, we want it to be kind of amorphous. We don't want it to take too much interest away. So we just kind of want it to be a random pattern. In background, we don't want it to be too perfect or borderline. This whole horse is a little bit abstract and wild, so we don't want it to be too orderly. Horizontal vertical strokes, alternating them, so I don't get super quick lines. I am getting just that beautiful, beautiful phthalo green on the edges, that straight green. So if you guys are still doing the mint green, I'm going to pause you, or the turquoisey minty green, really quick. You're going to use whatever you have on your brush, that green color, and you're going to do the front of the eye, just kind of a spot right there, at the corner, kind of at the top corner. It's almost a base for our highlight. And then you can dip just the very tip of your brush in straight white. Just the very tip. I still have all that green on my brush. I just dipped the very tip in straight white. And in the corner of that, we're going to do that tiny little highlight, which is the reflection on his eye. And you want to curve it just a little because any highlight on the eye is going to curve with the shape of the eyeball. Just like that. And it's amazing what that highlight will help do for the horse and eye, the whole focal point of the painting. And then you can finish your background. The original has some white in the background, with some lighter highlights really right around here, and then down on here. If you're liking your background as is, I would recommend leaving it where it is, because I think in the original, it was better without the white. And I just kept going a little too far when I should have let it be. But I'll just show you what I did, so you can choose to incorporate that if you would like. doing that combination of the horizontal and vertical, and just going lightly over it so it's not too uniform. A little bit in here. Now, if you want to make any of your shadows darker, or any of your highlights lighter, or go over your medium tones to emphasize anything you think needs a little bit, to be a little bit stronger in the face to make it more, or make it make more sense. Now is definitely a good time. I'm going to step back one final time, but then I think I'm going to leave mine where it is. Make this a little darker. So at this point, it kind of depends on your proportions and where your horse ended up. If you think if there's a part that's bothering you and you need to touch it up, but we're pretty much done. So before we log out, is there anything I can look at for you guys?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
I'm having a hard time blending. Let's see if I can move back far enough. Like right here.
Mm-hmm. So I actually think it looks okay. I don't think your line is too harsh.
Okay.
I think the effect is very natural.
Okay.
I like it. If you do want to blend more, I would get a nice glaze, that dark purple, and I would glaze it even, like water it down really, really well and go over the line where the red meets the purple and bring that into the red a little bit more, and you'll find that softens that line right there a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So should I extend the mane out over the background? I know I'm getting a bunch of glare from the lights.
Gosh, it's beautiful. I love how strong your face turned out. I think it suits the whole style of your composition right now. If you did want to make it kind of come out like this a little bit more, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking maybe it needed to go out a little bit more.
The curve of your face is very strong. I really like, I don't know, like your horse looks more manly than mine. And I think he looks fantastic. And I think that mane really suits him. If you do want to bring it out more, I would just start with the deep, dark, bluish purple and maybe glaze it a little bit. Don't come out too strong. And I would start in the corner and just make it more of a rounded, almost like the shape of the basketball, just just a nice round and come down here. Because right now you probably come down here a little bit more.
Okay.
Let's just
Just
add a
make
little
it
bit
pop
right
over.
here.
Okay.
Yeah. Gosh, those look awesome. Do you guys paint as hobbyists?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except I don't typically paint on canvas. I airbrush and that, so I'm more messy with this. Do you think it needs more white? I mean, when you look at your original one, you were saying that you did more white in it.
I did. This guy has quite a bit more white. You can see
Yeah.
he's quite brighter. This is almost pure white over here.
Right.
And then this is actually quite a bit lighter, this line right here, as well as this part right here. And in hindsight, I wish I hadn't done that on the original, because it was really beautiful with just the green. Let me
Right.
see if I can find a picture. I took progress pictures. Let me see. This is probably the closest I can get. So that's the original before I added all of that white.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of hard to tell, but I think it was much more balanced like that. But I just demonstrated where the white was, like right here, above the line of main. I'll paint some more of that in so you can see if you want to add it. Get the blue off my brush here. So I would definitely glaze the white. I wouldn't throw white on straight.
Right.
So I'm glazing it, and I'm just kind of comes up here and glazed over the top of this right here. This is probably the whitest part of the original. You want white. And there was kind of thick white back here too. You want to highlight those parts. When you emphasize one part of the composition, you want to balance it. So we have balance right here with these whites. And then if you wanted to get kind of balance that in the face, you could add a little bit of yellow to white and then glaze it really well. And that would just make it a bit thicker. And then you could lighten up under here, just a little under the eye there. And then up under here is also a little bit lighter. And then a little bit lighter just right here. You can see that?
Mm-hmm.
You can even throw some straight yellow in to kind of get the same effect of adding a highlight to make those parts a bit brighter. Yeah. That makes them a little closer. Put some white in there. I just don't want to clean my brush, so I'm using paper. Instead of the lighter. But it's also a huge help if you guys want to look at the original, which really emphasizes those highlights. You can go to the Paint Post's website, and it should it'll still be up on their calendar if you don't have a picture of the original. And you can also view this video again. Oops. No. Highlights in the main course. I'll hold this up for you guys for a bit. And then is there anywhere I can send you guys a picture of the one I did tonight if you want to reference it to finish up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a phone number?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Alrighty. What are those?
751-3769.
Perfect.
752-7952.
Awesome. I'll take a good picture of the one we did tonight, and you can wrap that up.
I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah, no, that was fun.
Yes.
Wonderful to have you.
And then the link to the video will be.
I will ask Kendra to send it to you guys as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And I'll get you a picture of tonight's painting. So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Crystal and Janice. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.